Hello, I'm Lori, and this is Mary Margaret Sweeney, and we're here today to talk to you about an upcoming training that we're facilitating on sex and relational therapy with neurodiverse clients. So, Mary Margaret, why don't you share a little bit more about who you are?
Hey everybody, my name is Mary Margaret. I am a certified sex therapist, licensed clinical social worker, and I am really excited about this training because I think when I look back from day one, I saw this come up in my work, and I didn't really know what it was at first. And so, kind of seeing that weave through, here we are, kind of melding minds here to create a training around our shared experience and professional expertise now at this point.
Thanks. And I'm Lori. I'm a certified neurodiverse couples therapist. I'm also an AAMFT approved supervisor and a licensed marriage and family therapist. And my private practice centers on neurodiverse couples and individuals in neurodiverse relationships. And as Mary Margaret said, I also had the same experience of not knowing what neurodiversity was in my own practice when I first was getting started and kind of coming to a place of recognizing how important it was to have specialized support and knowledge to be able to offer to these couples. I think it's been a couple years ago now, Mary Margaret and I got together for breakfast. And as we started chatting, we were both like, I want to pick your brain. I want to pick your brain. And we really found that we had a lot of complementary knowledge about this topic. About how sex and neurodiversity and couples work all kind of come together. So, Mary Margaret, do you want to share a little bit more about why we decided to do this specific training?
Yeah, well, if folks don't know, Lori has a great consultation group around neurodiversity and working with clients on the neurodiverse spectrum. And so she had invited me to come speak to that group one day. And it was just a great conversation. The folks in that group were really interested and excited. And so, as we were, kind of going over time, I think on that on that Zoom call, I was thinking, there's clearly like an appetite for this in the community. And I know that people seek me out, and so often clients will say, here's our issue around sex. Also, do you know anything about ADHD? Here's our sexual concern. Do you know anything about autism? Right. And so it continues to come up. So I felt like, clinicians are talking about it, clients are talking about it. It's something I've sought some training on. So we've got to talk more about it. So I, messaged Lori and said, thanks for having me, at that consult meeting. Should we do something else with this? Could we offer this to the larger therapist community, and kind of bring our two base knowledge sets and how they talk to each other?
Yeah, that's a great summary. I don't have a lot to add. I would agree that consultation group experience, like it really felt like a marathon, like we were just cramming so much, that just like the questions and the responses just kept flowing, and there was really great energy around it. And I really appreciated your contributions to that group and having that perspective that comes from your knowledge as a sex therapist and your particular expertise in that area. And it really made me realize how much like there's ways that you approach your work that I think apply to kind of all couples therapy as well. And this overlap between, some of the ways in which it's helpful to support couples from a systemic perspective, a couples therapy perspective, marriage and family therapy approach, that there's a lot of overlap there in terms of some of the general approaches to couples work and some of what specifically becomes even more important when we're talking about a topic that has as much complexity and, as much nuance as sex and sexuality in these relationships. And I'll just add that kind of a piece of this too was for me feeling like I was looking around at other CEU opportunities out there, and there certainly are some awesome people doing great stuff on neurodiversity. But I made the mistake of purchasing a training that I won't name that was like pre-recorded and really dry and kind of all over the place, not very neurodiversity affirming, felt way more pathologizing than how I usually like to think and talk about my practice. And that kind of got me to mobilize in terms of applying to be a CEU provider and wanting to be able to do this kind of training in a way where people can get credit for it and can hopefully have a much more interactive and engaging experience of learning, as well as hopefully feeling like there's a culture of curiosity and of kind of sharing our wisdom that feels a little bit more generative and applicable to our clinical work.
I think, for me, since COVID, so many things have moved online exclusively and we're doing everything by screens like this, right? And
Uh-huh.
that's opened so much up. It's been great. And also, we are in this world now of more of these pre-recorded by this training. I don't know who recorded it. I don't know when it was. I don't,
Yeah.
and I feel like what's exciting to me about this is offering this primarily to our own therapist community where we can make those connections with each other. You are on a screen and you might be sitting in a Zoom classroom, right, with people who are practicing in your city. So you can get to know some of these people too if you are in the Indy area, and we are, right? And so I
Yeah.
think that additional layer of community, I think, has made me feel a little bit more like in tune, like, no, we are real people, and this is a training with folks who I,
Uh-huh.
I know and could, refer to. And I'm excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. That there's still the convenience of being online, and it saves us from some space constraints in terms of like the logistical piece, but also hopefully it's going to feel warmer and more connecting, and more personal than just a pre-recorded option. Absolutely. So who's this training for?
Great question. Great question. I feel like the question I get most often as a sex therapist is when do I refer to a sex therapist versus what can I do?
Mhm.
And I think this question maybe kind of goes along with that, you know, everyone it feels like is talking about neurodiversity right now, which is great. And so I think a lot of folks know a lot of stuff right now. I think this training is really good for anyone who has maybe even some basic knowledge about that, but wants to see maybe how that shows up in a more relational context. Maybe they only work with individuals and they don't kind of think about the relationship aspect of some of that stuff yet. Certainly folks who are doing individual or relational work and aren't really sure about the sex therapy part and want to kind of dip their toe into where that might be showing up, right? I know for me, you can kind of know a thing and then you have this one little door open and it's like, oh my gosh, all of these connections, right? So I think
Uh-huh.
we're already working, with folks who are neurodiverse, we'll still get a lot out of this. I think if you're
Hmm.
someone who maybe feels like probably statistically I'm working with neurodiverse folks, but maybe I don't even know it, right? This might help you identify some of that. And lastly, what I'll say to go back to Laura, your point about, the non-pathologizing. In this training, we'll talk about how some of these things show up specifically for neurodiverse clients. And also they show up for everybody, right? They
Uh-huh.
might show up in really specific ways in this community, or we might call it a certain thing, label it as criterion of diagnosis or something, but it's a thing we all we'll see, and so, to be, I guess, too general, too broad about it, but I think it really will be helpful for any clinician who knows or suspects they might be working with neurodiverse folks, who want some more context for how that nexus of sexuality plays into that, and how they can help people, to their own clients, to take away the pathology. Often if you start doing your own research, you find something and it really is pathologizing, right? Here's what your partner will struggle with. Here's going to be
Hmm.
challenges. And we will talk about those things, but I hope in a way that we can also look at the strengths of these couples and to really look at, these are just facts about someone's experience, and we're going to learn how to manage them just like we would anything else.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that way of languaging all of that. And it reminded me, I don't think we've really defined how we're thinking about what a neurodiverse couple is. Like this is still a
Right.
term that I think is newer and not everybody knows it, but it could be a couple where both partners are neurodivergent, but it could also be a couple where one person identifies as neurodivergent or has diagnosed neurodivergent. The other person might identify as neurotypical, but basically kind of any couple where there's some element of brain-based differences that are showing up in terms of how they relate to one another, and are potentially, contributing to some struggles in terms of how to navigate differences and not having a lot of good kind of cultural supports or templates for how to do that. And I absolutely agree. I think we're talking more and more about neurodiversity clinically, but I think I still see it so often in this individual context. And even just like the term neurodiversity itself implies relationality, right? That there's this diversity of brains and there's more than one person in the mix. And I think it's really important to try to continue to develop knowledge, language, skills around what does it look like to think relationally about neurodiversity and how do we support people in neurodiverse relationships so that they feel less marginalized in their experience and more like they're able to co-create the types of relationships that work best for them. So it's all good stuff, and we hope you'll join us for this training. So just one last note that there are 3 CEUs available. It is a live event, so we hope you'll join us live, but you can also access the recording later if you're not able to attend with us and get that participatory experience. You can learn more in the link that's in the description to this video and sign up and register today. The training is happening on, I think it's February 27th. Do I have that
I think
right?
you're right.
I should have double checked this for our notes, but February 27th. So still got several weeks to sign up and to join us, and we hope to see you there.